Hello, how are you all? So today will be pretty fun. This opinion piece came out recently in the LA Times, and I thought it would be really fun to do a dramatic reading for you because it was that powerful, this piece. And I do need to warn you before we get started that this is not a joke. This is real. A real human wrote this article. They thought about it, and then they typed it out, and then they edited it because you have to make sure there's no grammatical errors and such. So they reread it. They probably reread it a bunch of times, and then they edited it, and then they, I don't know, maybe submitted it to their editor. I don't do that. Maybe they submitted it to their editor, and the editor was like, yeah, this is cool. And then it was published, and now it's on the LA Times. So these things happen, and this is real. So I do need to tell you that. And the more I started reading the first few paragraphs, and it sounds like a parody. It is not a parody. So let's get started. And I think per tradition, I need some music, some background music. I tried to find some suspense type thriller music, and I found this, which, okay. Let's get started. The title of this piece of art is, what can you do about the Trumpites next door? You're ruining my mood! Now I'm gonna get started. Oh, heck no, it reads. The Trumpites next door to our pandemic gateway, who seem as devoted to the ex-president as you can get without being Q fans, just plowed our driveway without being asked and did a great job. The horror. How am I going to resist demands for unity in the face of this aggressive niceness? I don't know. I can't imagine what you're struggling with right now. But let's go forward. I know this is hard, but we'll get there. Of course, on some level, I realize I owe them thanks. And man, it really looks like the guy backdragged the driveway like a pro, but how much thanks? My song ended. How much thanks? These neighbors are staunch partisans of blue lives, and there aren't a lot of anything other than white lives in this neighborhood. Oh my gosh, they support police officers. They support police officers, and it's a mostly white neighborhood that you also chose to live in. This is also kind of weird. Back in the city, people don't sweep other people's walkways for nothing. What could they possibly want from you? Maybe it's like what Eddie Murphy discovered in that old Saturday Night Live sketch, White Like Me. He goes undercover in white makeup and finds that when white people are amongst their own, they pop free champagne and live the high life. As Murphy puts it, slowly, I began to realize that when white people are alone, they give each other things for free. I've given people a lot of things in my life, and there's never been a race criteria. I've never met anyone that does have a race criteria, but according to you, that's a thing. According to you. And then naturally it escalates to radical Islam. So, next paragraph. Hezbollah. The Shiite Islam, is that how you say it? The Shiite. Shite. I am merely a blonde. Darn it. Okay. Hezbollah, the Shiite Islamist political party in Lebanon, also gives things away for free. You know who else gives things away for free? Charities. Charities and radical Islam, according to this logic, are one and of the same. The favors Hezbollah does for people in the cities, Tyre and Sidon, I'm not sure how to pronounce those, probably don't involve snow plows. Probably not. Good observation. But like other mafias, Hezbollah tends to its own, the shite sick, I don't know how to say that, I'm sorry, elderly and hungry. They offer protection and hospitality and win loyalty that way. They also demand devotion to their brutal us versus them anti-Sunni clause. Sunni, anti-Sunni clause. Some of us are family, the favors say. The rest are infidels. Let's stop right there for just a second. Because the only us versus them that I'm seeing, thinking that other people are infidels, are you thinking that your Trump supporter neighbor is an infidel. That's basically what you're saying. You're saying that this person is morally wrong. You're dehumanizing them, calling them Trumpites, which rhymes with termites, I'm guessing is the cute thing that you're doing. So you're basically saying that half the country are Trumpites because they voted for Trump, and you just contradicted yourself in that you're the bad. You're the baddie. You're the baddie because you're saying that because they voted differently than you, they are they're the bad ones. That you're doing the same thing. Silly. Let's continue. Because it gets better. It always gets better. But I need music. Okay. The same is true with Louis Farrakhan, whom currently helms the Nation of Islam. While the Southern Poverty Law Center classifies him as a dangerous anti-Semite, much of his flock says he's just a little screwy and unfallingly something I don't know, because again, blonde, to them. When someone helps you when you're down or snowed in, it's almost impossible to regard them as a blight on the world. In fact, you're more likely to be overwhelmed with gratitude and convinced of the person's inherent goodness. You might end up like the upper middle class family I stayed with in France as a teenager. They did not attend a citywide celebration for the 100th birthday of Charles de Gaulle, the war hero who orchestrated the liberation of his country from Nazi Germany in 1944. They did have several portraits of Philippe, a Nazi collaborator, on their wall. So this family, Nazi people on their wall, a family who supports the president and plowed your driveway, they're the same. Same thing. Glad we're all on the same page here. When I screwed up the courage to ask how it was for them during the occupation, the lady of the house replied, "We were happy because the Nazis were very polite." Loving your neighbor is evidently much easier when your neighborhood is full of people just like you. What do we do about the Trumpites around us? Like Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who spoke eloquently this week about her terrifying experiences during the insurrection at the Capitol on January 6th. Americans are expected to forgive and forget before we even stitched up our wounds or gotten our vaccines against the pandemic that former President Trump utterly failed to mitigate. My neighbors supported a man who showed near murderous contempt for the majority of Americans. They kept him in business with their support. But the plowing. On January 6th, after the insurrection, Senator Ben Sasse issued an aw shucks plea for all Americans to love their neighbors. The United States said, "Isn't Hatfield's and McCoy's this blood feud forever?" He added, "You can't hate someone who shovels your driveway." At that time, I seethed. The Capitol had just been desecrated, but my neighbor heard Sasse and was determined to make a bid for reconciliation. Okay, let's talk about that for a second. I don't know a single person who voted for Trump, and I'm sure there's some out there, but I do not know a single commentator or individual that voted for the president that was not appalled by what happened on the Capitol on January 6th. I was appalled by it. Everyone I know and respect and follow was appalled by it. But the difference between me and the difference between the person that wrote this article is that I'm consistent. I was appalled at all of the violent riots that happened all summer. Unlike Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who said that people should be uncomfortable. Protests should make people uncomfortable. They should make people feel that way. So the very same woman who said that they should make people uncomfortable are now all of a sudden against them. So the difference between myself and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or probably this individual, who I'm going to guess, if I'm wrong, correct me, is that I stay consistent and I call out all acts of violence, no matter what side it's on. And I also follow and respect politicians, commentators, thinkers, journalists who remain consistent on all things across the board. So just had to say that part, but let's start our music on and heed forward. So here's my response to my plowed driveway. For now, politely but not profusely, I'll acknowledge the Sassian move. With a wave and a thanks, a minimal start on building back trust. I'm not ready to knock on the door with a covered dish yet. I also can't give my neighbors absolution. It's not mine to give. Free driveway work, as nice as it is not the same currency as justice and truth. To pretend it is would be to lie, and they probably aren't looking for absolution anyway. But I can offer a standing invitation to make amends, not with a snowplow, but out of recognition of the truth about the Trump administration and, more important, by the working for justice for all those whom the administration harmed. Only when we work shoulder to shoulder to repair the damage of the last 4 years will we even begin to dig out of this storm. Okay, so a few things to talk about here. Where do you start with this? Where do you start? Well, let's start. A lot of people think that Trump was so dangerous because of the pandemic. Well, if you're going to criticize Trump, then you're going to also have to fairly criticize Biden, who did not agree with the travel ban on China that Trump enacted early on in the coronavirus days, which actually prevented thousands and thousands of more cases coming to America. And President Trump also was under the direct counsel of Dr. Fauci, who Biden is working with. And I watched every single press briefing with President Trump, and he had Birx there, he had Fauci there, and they were all there. And every time they asked a question about the coronavirus and Trump didn't know, he would refer back to them. So that this argument holds no water that Trump fumbled through the pandemic response. And Trump also did something very undictatory-like and allowed for states to manage their own state states. And if you look at the states that are doing the worst, that have the highest numbers, those are typically Democratic-run states, i.e. California. Up in here, we've had some of the strictest lockdowns, yet we have some of the biggest surges right now, same as New York and other places like that. So that argument really doesn't hold any water. And let's talk about the terrible things that Trump did during his administration. He made us energy independent. He protected our borders. He kept us out of wars. We had no terrorist attacks. He had peace in the Middle East, which Democratic leaders have historically said was impossible to get, and Trump did it. Nominated 3 or 4 times over the summer for a Nobel Peace Prize, even though it doesn't mean anything anymore because we're just like handing them out to everyone. But back when it meant something, just kidding. But you know what I'm saying. He made the lives for everyday Americans better. And the only reason that we think it was so bad is because the media was in hysterics over Donald Trump for the past 4.5 years. And they made us feel hysterical. And to this individual, I also want to say something. This idea of, I was very critical and still am. I was very critical. I want to start with saying this before I go into that. I watched Glenn Beck have a reaction to this article, and he said something, and he said there's a few truths that he lives by. And one of them is that I'm only certain of one thing. I am certain that I am not certain of anything. And you have to live with that mindset. This individual does not live with that mindset. This individual strongly and staunchly believes that she has the moral high ground, that she is the moral better. And that's also exactly the problem with terrorist organizations. They convince people that they are morally better than the other person. That's the same thing you saw happen with Nazi Germany. Hitler was elected into office. Hitler was Man of the Year on Time magazine in 1938. So he had the favor of a large amount of people. And the reason he got people to believe that Jewish people were bad is because you make people think that you are on the moral high ground. So if I'm on the moral high ground and you're below me, that dehumanizes you. You know? You get people to believe in atrocities, they'll commit absurdity, or the backward. You get people to believe in absurdities, they will commit atrocities. And that's exactly what this is. So you contradicted yourself in this article. And and I remember back in over the summer, I watched my neighborhood get burnt down. My car was surrounded by over 100 violent rioters. I was scared for my life. I saw buildings in my neighborhood busted out. I saw cars abandoned in the middle of the street and caught on fire. The next day I went to help clean up. I swept up glass. I cleaned up spray paint all over my neighborhood. I got pepper spray powder in my eyes. I walked past an elderly home that said, "We have sick and elderly in here. Please leave us alone." I watched the Black Lives Matter protests turn into that. A few weeks later, I was so you can imagine what I think of the Black Lives Matter movement, seeing that happen in my neighborhood, right? Imagine what I think of the movement. But I'm smart enough to know that not everyone that participates in the Black Lives Matter movement are evil, terrible rioters. I know that. So what happened when a few weeks later, by the way, when we were in the middle of a pandemic, at the height of our lockdown, 20,000 people marched through my neighborhood. I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. I was doing my distancing. I was doing my mask. I was staying home. I did everything my government asked me to do. I innocently walk in my neighborhood one day to go get cat food, and I was bombarded with 20,000 people. Did I get angry at them? Did I call them all evil people? Did I write an op-ed about how I am so much better than them and I don't know how I can ever forgive them? No, I didn't do that because I'm smarter than that. I know that most people are good. So what did I do? As someone who has criticized BLM on my channel, I walked up to that protest and I found somebody and I walked with him and I asked him questions. I didn't try to prove my point. I didn't try to argue with him. I was solely there to understand him and why he was there. And that is how you move forward as a society. And that is what a healthy adult does, not this. That is what a healthy adult does, and that is how you move forward as a society. Someone helping you at that's obviously a good person. A bad person does not go plow another person's driveway. That's very hard work. I've done it before. It's not fun. That's why I live in California. But I don't know. Let me know your thoughts on this article and this piece. But the side that's calling for unity, there's no, just because you befriend someone, just because you have a conversation with them, doesn't mean that you agree with them. It doesn't mean that you are succumbing to them. It says you are a human being, and I'm smart enough to know that most human beings are good. I'm smart enough to know that a dictator was not elected into office. I'm smart enough to know that half of America is not bad. So I'm willing to have a conversation with you. That doesn't mean that we agree. That doesn't mean that I'm going to change my mind. It just means that I am a healthy, smart, strong-minded individual. We have gotten to this place where people are so fragile, they cannot even allow themselves to be around someone that disagrees with them. This is how fragile we have become as a society, and how infantile we have become as a society, where someone who is just has a different political idea than us is all of a sudden dangerous. It makes no sense. When who this person supports all summer was marching down the streets, burning things up. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think about all of that, and I'll see you later. Bye.